Welcome to the Unlist. I am once again revisiting the house of Montblanc, a perfume house that is basically named after a luxury stationery brand that comes out of Germany. If you watch my video on Montblanc, I explain the origins of the house. I'm not going to do that here. And the reason is, my primary purpose for this video is to discuss the Montblanc Legend fragrance line, as that is the fragrance line that I think currently sells the most of all of their fragrances. They tend to focus more on men's perfumes than women's. They're not men exclusive, much like houses such as Creed and Parfum de Marly. They tend to skew more towards male releases than female ones. I think that's just because they've seen who's buying their fragrances, and I don't know if it's really a sexist thing or just men tend to gravitate more towards luxury stationery than I think women do, just traditionally. Not that women don't like calligraphy or nice pens, but I just feel like men are more likely to have overpriced pens in their pockets. I mean, if you've seen American Psycho, you see how they go nuts over business cards and pens, right? That's their thing. They go crazy. So I kind of feel like those things are hand in hand. However, bulk and majority of guys these days buying Montblanc fragrances probably have no clue that they actually started off with pens. They've probably never seen a Montblanc pen, never used a Montblanc pen. I would go so far as to say most men who buy these perfumes probably have never touched a fountain pen. They probably just use the same Bic roller balls and Papermate pens that the rest of us schlubs all use. They only know of the brand based on the fragrances. And that's sort of what happens when you have a niche product like a pen and then you move into perfume, which gets a much wider market. Obviously, there's a much bigger market for perfume than high-end pens. And then that becomes your calling card. Pun intended there. Becomes your calling card. Suddenly, the thing that you started off doing, people don't remember anymore. People don't realize that you started off with that thing. I mean, it's sort of like how there are a lot of guys running around with Cartier fragrances, don't realize Cartier is a watchmaker and jeweler. Now, of course, there are a lot of people that know they are a watchmaker and jeweler. Don't get that twisted. But there is definitely a large population of Cartier fragrance users who just know them from the Macy's counters, the Nordstrom counters, so on and so forth, right? It's just how it goes. I think Montblanc's particular situation is a bit more pronounced because it is a little easier to find Cartier jewelry than it is to find Montblanc pens. I mean, you can't even find an Office Depot or a Staples anymore, right? People don't really use pen and paper. Everything is done on computers now. Everything is done over emails. So maybe it's actually a good thing that Montblanc is known more for fragrances than they are for anything else, because there may come a day when they can't sell a pen anymore, right? They just frankly can't sell a pen. Might as well transition now while you still can. Anyway, the Legend line currently consists of 5 major releases. There have been a couple of what I call sub-flankers, but there are 5 major releases, including the original Legend from 2011. I have all of those major releases up here on the shelf. I'm going to reach over here and grab them. So they are, in the order of release, the original Montblanc Legend 2011. Then from there, you had the Montblanc Legend Spirit, which was the first major flanker for the line. This came out in 2016. Then a year later, we got the Montblanc Legend Night 2017. This was a a heavier, more gourmand flavor, if you will. Then, after that, in 2000 and I think 20, could be wrong, could be 21, I think 2020, we got the Montblanc Legend Red release. And then, most recently, this year, 2024, saw the release of Montblanc Legend Blue. Although technically Legend Blue had been released 2 times prior as limited edition summertime flankers, but it finally returned as a permanent lineup to the range in 2024. We'll talk about that in a bit, but before we get into that, let's go and talk about the original. So, as some of you probably know, the Montblanc Legend line gets a lot of flack, not only from enthusiasts in the online fragrance community, but it also gets a lot of flack from people in the industry, because it is a very obvious and shameless take, if you will, on the Abercrombie & Fitch Fierce fragrance that came out in 2002. So, little under a decade later, 2011 from 2002, we would see this guy. And, well, perfumer, I think it's Christophe or Christopher Laudamel, but I'm not sure which. I'm sorry, my guy, if you watch this video and I get your first name wrong. I just am not great with names. I'm better with faces. But Laudamel did a big piece on Instagram, actually. He did a big piece on Instagram where he exposed this fragrance by putting it under GCMS, putting it under gas chromatography. And what he discovered is that Montblanc Legend is like 6 ingredients different from Abercrombie & Fitch Fierce. And why that's important is that both fragrances have like 150 ingredients. So if you figure out of 150 some odd ingredients, and there's only 6 different between the two, that means they are like 95-96% the same. So they are much more the same than they are different. So it was clear that Montblanc Legend was itself likely created by using gas chromatography on Abercrombie & Fitch Fierce, which is not illegal technically. It's not illegal, but it was done. And chances are, at least from my opinion, this is where I stop talking about Laudamel and his findings, and I talk about my own insight. I personally believe it was done because Abercrombie & Fitch is more of a United States phenomenon, right? Abercrombie & Fitch had boutiques all up and down eastern and western seaboards all across the United States. Some in Canada, some in Mexico. They might have had a couple of things in Europe, okay? I'm not saying that they did not exist in Europe, but much like Tommy Hilfiger, much like Calvin Klein, much like Estee Lauder, okay, these were U.S.-centric brands, okay? And so was Abercrombie & Fitch Fierce, a U.S.-centric brand. Because of that, Montblanc saw money on the table by effectively stealing their thunder and introducing a smash hit fragrance in the US, but to European audiences. So this stuff was released in France, sold all throughout the EU and the UK before Brexit. So everyone over there got their hands on this, and I guess for the first time, we're basically smelling Fierce, but as a Montblanc fragrance. And guess what? It sold. And then it also kind of made its way back to U.S. shores because Montblanc also sells in the U.S., right? You find them in every Macy's, you find them in every JCPenney, you find them in the Sephora's. So before long, this ended up on U.S. shelves too. and competing right up against Fierce. And the thing is, you can only get Fierce at Abercrombie and Fitch stores. You can only get Fierce at their boutiques. You can't buy Fierce at Sephora. You can't buy Fierce at Ulta. You can't get Fierce at Macy's or JCPenney or Saks or Nordstrom's or any of those places. So this had much wider distribution, global distribution, and it had a designer backing it up, not a boutique like Zara, because that's what Abercrombie and Fitch basically is. They're like Zara, okay? They're like Hollister. They're like American Eagle. They're like Express. What's the other one? Victoria's Secret. All of those sort of chain kind of places, they are just like that. So Montblanc had a bit more clout in the designer sphere than Abercrombie and Fitch did. So you can call it a dirty move if you want to, and it might be a dirty move, but it's what they did, and it sold really, really well. So now we got that out of the way, let's discuss the fragrance. If you've smelled Abercrombie and Fitch Fierce, you probably know what to expect here. Let's just get that out the way too. But there are differences. And there are differences that, in my mind, make this maybe not something you would buy if you owned Fierce. But if you didn't own Fierce, like me, I don't own Fierce, you could very much wear this instead of Fierce. This could replace Fierce, but it would not be a good alongside purchase. If you have Fierce already, you can gloss over this. But why would you pick this over Fierce, right? And my opinion is this is more fougere. Fierce was not quite a fougere. Fierce was built like your typical ozonic, sweet, sour candy type of fragrance from the early 2000s. So Fierce was up against things like Crave by Calvin Klein. It was up against things like Kenneth Cole New York Men. It was up against things like Polo Black by Ralph Lauren. That's the kind of company it kept. And this scent takes that profile but enhances it with synthetic oak moss. So we're talking Varanis, aka Evernal. Much heavier Evernal Varanis riff in this perfume. This fragrance also uses pomerose, which is a special molecule that's supposed to be a sweetened sort of rose kind of fruit combined together note. It first emerged in a Donna Karan fragrance. That's where it first turned up. And it evolved from some materials that were first created for Curve. If you remember Curve, another American fragrance, American-centric, Liz Claiborne. Curve for Men by Liz Claiborne had a couple of materials in it, and pomerose would evolve from those materials, or would be a single material designed to emulate the combination of those materials, which is another reason why Curve smells very similar to Fierce, and why Fierce smells very similar to this. But this contains that pomerose, whereas neither Fierce nor Curve does. So the pomerose, the extra bit of a vernal in here, a little bit more lavender. This tugs towards fougere. So if you ever wondered what Fierce might smell like if it was a bit more Eternity, you know, a bit more Paco Rabanne XS, a bit more Platinum Egoist, if you wanted that kind of vibe mixed with some Fierce, so, you know, more of a classy fougere smell mixed with Fierce, you would get this. And it's just like a bit more grown up. It's a bit more grown up version of Fierce. So if you're someone who wore Fierce a lot as a teenager in the 2000s, and by 2011 it comes rolling around, you're now in your 20s or possibly your 30s, but you still love Fierce and you can't bring yourself to continue wearing it because it's Fierce, right? Then hey, you can give it up and you can move into a bottle of this. And it's familiar, but it's a little more structured, a little stronger too, and you'll be happy. Everyone's happy, you're happy. You still smell like a shopping mall circa 2005. You still smell like you shop at Hot Topic. Okay, it's fine. No one's judging you. Well, I'm judging you a little bit, but no one who matters is judging you. So, there was an intense version of that, which came out the following year in 2012. That got quickly discontinued. It was stronger, sharper, mossier, a little less sweet, a little more pungent. I don't own a bottle of it, but I have smelled it. And it was designed to, I guess, fix some of the problems with Legend, but unfortunately, it became just the reputation of Legend was such that no one really wanted to give an intense version of it a chance. So it just sunk, right? It was like the people who were upset that it smelled like Fierce weren't going to buy an intense version of it anyway. And anyone who felt like they wanted a more intense version or a stronger version would just overspray the original. So, you know, it just was like a product without an audience is what it was. It was a release without a customer base. So, in 2014, we saw the first appearance of this. I told you this came out in 2024, but the first iteration of a blue Legend was 2014. And this blue version of Legend had similar notes to this version. Didn't have the mint though. Didn't have the mint. Had a bit more rose, but it was a similar, fresher, brighter, more summery version of the original. Tugged even further into fougere territory than the original. And it was released in a solid blue bottle, not a clear one like this. It didn't have any letters on it. It was no lettering. And it was sold for 1 year. Then fast forward to 2016, and we see this guy, Legend Spirit. Like the first proper flanker that is not a limited edition, is not an intense version, is an actual permanent addition to the lineup. And Legend Spirit came out, it had a entirely different structure from the original Legend, actually. And this particular one, got more traction with your typical compliment bros, your dude bros, your usual suspects on places like Fragrantica and Reddit and Oda Jerks and all those kind of places, YouTube comment sections, the whole Dogo performance, bro, yeah, that whole group of people, the fragrance army kind of guys, they gravitated towards this real men's style. You know what I'm talking about, where the hair looks like it's plastic, it's back like this, so look like a used car salesman. So those kind of folks that really are a little too concerned about their image more than they probably should be, right? You need a personality first and image second, right? People don't like what's coming out of here, then they're not going to really care about any of this either. Just saying, speak from experience. I know that for a fact. Now this came out, and those kind of guys went right towards it. And the reason is, when this came out, it smelled very much like Paco Rabanne Invictus Aqua, the original Invictus Aqua, the one with the frosted bottle. It's not a one-for-one copy. Not a one-for-one copy to that, but it smells similar enough that when Invictus Aqua went away, because it was also a limited edition, this is still available. So all those dude bros came flocking to this because they're like, oh, I missed my chance at the Invictus Aqua. And people like Jeremy Fragrance said it was the best thing ever, better than sliced bread, right? So that meant everybody had to have their own bottle, and they couldn't because it was already gone. So people will settle. You know, people buy clones when they can't afford a Ventus. Guess what? People will buy Legend Spirit when they can't get their hands on the original Invictus Aqua. That's just how that cookie crumbles, guys. And I don't think this was really made with the intention of being a replacement for Aqua, because they came out at the same time. Remember, same year. These came out in 2016, both of them did. So I don't think this was designed with the intent to be a replacement for that fragrance, but because that fragrance died and this one carried on and they were very close to each other, people went, good enough for government work, and they grabbed this. What do I think of it? I like it, actually. I like this better than what actually exists as Invictus Aqua in 2024, and they've remade it twice over. They came out with like a 2018 version of Invictus Aqua that was much sweeter and heavier and more like the original Invictus. And then they recently reintroduced it again in 2024 with a frosted bottle like the original. And who knows what that smells like. That could smell like the 2016 version, or it could just be the 2018 version in another bottle. I don't really know. I don't care. But this, it's clean, it's fresh, doesn't have as much bubble gum as Invictus does. Still has a little bit though. It's got some saltiness. I don't want to say this is another GCMS thing because it came out the same year. So if anything, it's a mod. It may not be GCMS of Invictus Aqua 2016, but what it probably is, a mod from the same brief. So the perfume house that got the brief from Paco Rabanne, who's owned by Puig, right? They created a fragrance for them, but then Interparfums, who owns Montblanc, the license for their perfume, said, hey, we'll buy one of those unused mods off of you, and we'll release that as a Legend flanker, and voila, here comes Legend Spirit. Probably just as simple as that. Let's not overthink it, guys, okay? Let's not overthink it. Now, here is Legend Night 2017. This particular fragrance is the sweet, gourmandy nighttime one. That's what this is. So, if you're someone who likes something like Paco Rabanne 1 Million, for instance, with the blood orange up top and the sweetness, but you don't want to go full bubblegum sweetness, you don't want Versace Eros, you don't want, again, Invictus, that's too sweet for you. You want more of a spicy vibe, you want more of that Dolce & Gabbana, the one, right, kind of vibe. Let's say you want to put a little bit of the one mixed in with a little bit of 1 million, so it's the 1 million. There you go. So if you want that kind of hybrid there, spicy, cardamom, sweet, vanilla, all right. It's got a bit of the slight bit of the Fougere DNA from the original Legend, but it's more or less built around amber, built around tonka, all right, built around vanilla. This is probably what you want. This is an eau de parfum instead of an eau de toilette, so it wears closer to the skin. It wears closer to the skin, but it's a little richer. Now, when this came out, I was very disappointed with it because I'm like, not another clubber, right? Like, not another teen movie, not another scary movie parody, whatever. Not another clubber, because it was another clubber. But over the years, my opinion has softened on this because of all the other clubbers that have come out, all the Stronger With Yous, all of the Bad Boys, all of the other garbage that's like that, the Carolina Herrera Privé and all that other shit, you know, that I think those are all just pointlessly, overly obsequious, go-getter type fragrances that end up just smelling like blah. This is probably one of the more, I don't want to say discreet, but because it's not as loud as the rest of them, it is loud in the opening, very loud in the opening, but when it dries down, it just feels a bit more buttoned up than some of those other ones I mentioned, and the Carolina Herreras, a lot of the other Paco Rabanne fragrances of this type, right? The various Emporio Armani things, the things that blow up the club really bad, the Versace fragrances. This is just a bit more sedate than them, so I like it for that reason. That's grown on me a bit. Still not amazing, okay? Not perfect, but Also, very little to do with the original Legend. Most of the Legend flankers don't really smell like Legend. That's no surprise for you guys, I'm sure, but most of the Legend flankers do not smell like Legend. Now, in 2018, okay, a year after this came out, 2018 saw the return of Legend Blue once again. And this time it was a clear bottle like this, but with no text on it. So it looked like this. Just imagine like this bottle, but just like this on both sides. That version of Legend Blue took a form a little closer to this one. It had the mint, okay, had the sage, the little aqueous rose note that was in the 2015 version was now gone. So you could call that one Mark 1 of Legend Blue, the limited edition 1 year 2015 fragrance. And then the 2018 version was like Mark 2. And then again, 1 year it sold, went away, never saw it again until that one. Then this one comes out, 2020, I think it's 20 or 21. A little foggy, pandemic, COVID, right? This guy comes out, and once again, smells nothing like any of the other fragrances from the Legend line. But it kind of sits somewhere between Maison Francis Kurkdjian, Amyris, Pour-Homme, and Polo Red. So if you like Polo Red's juicy cranberry type tart notes up front, but you don't like how sweet it gets, you want that drier, sort of more airy feel that Amyris has, but still fruity. So this is kind of like in between the two. This is like the opening of Polo Red and the dry down of Amyris by MFK. If those two put together sound like a good deal for you, then this is what you want. It's got a little bit of that pickle sandalwood in it. I'm not a big fan of that kind of sandalwood, what I call the pickle wood, but it's not enough to break the deal. I still like this. And that dry, tart, green vetiver, woody feel, the juicy opening, the dry, fresh base, makes this a good alternative. And if you're someone that doesn't want to spring $350 fucking dollars for an MFK fragrance in 2024, right? You can grab this for a whole lot less and be happy. So there you go, short and sweet. Not a whole lot to say about that one. I like it, and that's all there is to it. Last but not least, we see the third and final coming of the Legend Blue, the newest one, 2024 release. This one, in its final form, like, you know, a Dragon Ball Z episode, this isn't even my final form, and it comes out, right? The lightning and everything and stuff, the glowy effects. So this guy comes out in 2024, and he's finally evolved. You've given him his Pokemon candies, and he's evolved up different forms. Now he's ready to take on the Master Trainer or whatever in the Coliseum or something. So this is basically a what if. Again, this has the most Legend DNA of all of them besides the original, because it's basically the original in that summer form from 2015, but altered again in 18 and then re-released in 24. So this time around, it's the final form. It's the final countdown. And it's basically just a more mature, minty, fresh, more lavender, sharper, woodier, more powdery, more sage, okay? This is kind of the Legend for the suit and tie guys. If you want that upper class experience, that more Platinum Egoist kind of feel, that Penhaligon sartorial kind of feel, you know, if you're going for that vibe, but you want it with a Legend DNA running through it, that Pomerose, that sweetness, that slight callback to the 2000s mall, but you still want to smell like you work for a Fortune 500 company, right? You still want to smell like you have a leased Jaguar down in the garage, an E-Pace or something, then this is what you wear. And again, it's an eau de parfum, so it's a little stronger, a little more rich, doesn't really project as much, but I like it. Now, There is also an eau de parfum of the original black bottle, which I did not buy and I cannot discuss with you. But there is an eau de parfum version of this that has an all glass bottle, no chrome shroud. And I believe there's a parfum version as well. And the parfum version is another one. So they tried to do the whole Dior Sauvage kind of thing, Bleu de Chanel kind of thing. Why? Where they had a toilette, eau de parfum, parfum, a good, better, best. They did that similar tiered situation with the Legend releases, but then they also give you the other flankers too. Whereas Sauvage and Bleu de Chanel don't really have other flankers. You only have that strongest kind of vibe. So, if you want a quick, what do I think of the range? Well, obviously I own all of them, so I must like the line. But I just think they're good workhorse fragrances. They're not highly artistic. They're not controversial. They don't make much of a statement about the wearer, other than that you smell good, and you know what a bar of soap is, and you know what shampoo is, and you probably put your socks on 1 foot at a time. So they just say you're clean, you're groomed, and you're ready to join the human race. What else is there? Right? What else do you want? Okay? What do you want for nothing? Your money back? You're not getting it. And that's basically it, guys. That's the Montblanc Legend rundown for you. Love it or shove it. The controversy surrounding the original one is probably going to always mar the line in the eyes of enthusiasts and other people online. They're going to always see that GCMS, bomb dropping that was the original and always hold that against the range. You can, but there are so many other clones out there and so many other similar, smells like as other things. The only difference between Legend and other fragrances is, I guess, somebody actually caught them. Somebody caught them. No one's ever tried to catch Armaf, right? No one's ever tried to catch anyone else that does this sort of thing. Whenever a niche brand comes out with a more expensive version of a cheaper fragrance, no one ever seems to care about that either, right? It's only you can only punch down, you can't punch up. Anyway, that's my opinion on it. Like I said, workhorse fragrances, they smell good. They don't have much to say for themselves, and if that's all you want in life, there you go. Montblanc Legend, enjoy. This has been the